Happy to be joined on the Sports Card Nation guest line. He's the host of the Elite Hunters channel on YouTube, heavy into vintage. So near and dear to my heart there as well. And as a gentleman I've gotten to know a little bit, through phone conversations and some texting. He lives in Dallas, but like myself, he's originally from the New York area. And happy to have him on Sports Carnation. James Perez, welcome to the show.
Hey, how are you? Thank you for having me on.
Oh, thanks for coming on. Hey, so you do, Elite Hunters on YouTube. You do a lot of shows, obviously centered on the vintage aspect of the hobby. Recently, for those that follow you on YouTube and the show, you haven't been posting any videos, and there's a good reason, unfortunately, for that. Thankfully, you're doing better, but you contracted the COVID-19 virus. Like I said, you're doing better, not 100%, as you told me before we kind of started recording, but it was kind of scary there for you. What you're able to talk about, if and comfortable talking about, kind of talk about how that, how all that sort of backstory to that, and for those that might be, I think sometimes, James, before you, with COVID-19, unless someone knows someone that's, had it, I don't think people realize how serious. I know we see it on the news and we see obviously the worst case scenarios, but I think sometimes people take for granted until they know somebody who's had it, how serious this is, and you got a case where it was kind of scary for you. Kind of talk about all that, just to lead into why maybe you haven't been doing shows recently before you get back on the horse again.
Yeah, like you said, I didn't respect it too much because I thought it was just going to be like the flu. Obviously, it affects everyone differently. It grabbed me pretty tough. It had me bedridden pretty much for 3 weeks, and I actually had to go to the hospital twice. It did start to affect my lungs a little bit, but fortunately, we were able to like nip it in the bud before it got really serious to the point where I needed like ventilators and stuff like that. But it I had the fever for basically 7 days straight. I've never had a fever for more than 2 days. So
Yeah.
to just feel weak from a fever for 7 days was, it really knocks you for a loop. And then the next couple weeks, aches, pains, chills, like you just can't shake it. It just grabs a hold of you and lets you know I'm not going anywhere, no matter how much medication you take, vitamins, it just
Yeah.
stays and sticks to you, and it demoralizes you. So it's not just physically. I lost a lot of weight. You can't eat. It's just your appetite goes, and you can't hold food down. So I'm still trying to gain my strength back and some of my weight back. And then mentally, you go through this phase where you just feel weakened by a force you couldn't do anything with. Like, people feel like they're in control most of the time. There's no controlling this. Once it has you, it does what it
Hmm.
wants with you. And that's why some people pass away, because they just can't do nothing about it.
Yeah.
But I respect it a lot more now.
Yeah.
I'm almost 100%. I would say I'm about 85, 90%. I want to start working out and feeling strong again, but it's just you don't have the energy every day. Some days you wake up and you feel like a blob. You just like that feeling of wanting to tackle the world every day. It's not there. Like your body is still rehabbing in a way. But I do respect it a lot, and only people that have it understand it or understand each other when you talk to someone else who has it, and we get each other. And some people I heard have been laid out for 5 months, like they just
Yeah.
can't breathe again normally. And I get it now. I get it. Like, it just ravages you.
Yeah, and I know in our conversation that we had recently, I mean, you even said like you love cards, you have a passion for it. I mean, obviously, health comes first. I mean, that's a no brainer. But you said there was, you weren't even thinking about cards. Like even when you started to feel a little bit better, it sort of really put things in perspective, so to speak,
It,
for you.
it it really puts things in perspective to which it's a hobby, and no matter how passionate you are about it, once your health comes, to risk, and you start realizing like there might be a chance you're going to the hospital and things could keep progressing worse. Is this it? Is this how I'm gonna go out? When those feelings come to mind, cards are like not even a blip on the radar because it's
Yeah,
just a hobby. It's something you enjoy doing, but it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things when it comes to health and family and things of that nature. And then when it's taking you so long to get back healthy, your priority is what do I have to do for tomorrow to feel better? And what do I have to do for next week to feel better? You're not really thinking about cards. I picked up boxes, slabs, boxes that have slabs in, and I look at them and I don't even last a minute. Like
yeah,
it's just I can't. It's just too many other things are way more important for me to spend time admiring cards. And I haven't been really active on YouTube. I haven't posted any videos. And supporting my friends that I've met throughout, I hope they understand it's not that I don't want to watch your stuff. I just have other priorities right now. And when
yeah.
those things get ironed out, then I'll get back to doing the things I had passion for. And that's all it is.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I've done shows. I do a smaller show called Hobby Quick Hits, and I've done a few episodes where I talk about prioritizing in the grand scheme of things. As much as we love cards, myself included, I realize I'm 48. I realize, where it ranks is a big part of my life as a former store owner, setting up at shows, collector, obviously. Is as much as I do all that stuff, it's still in the grand scheme of things. I'm a dad, you're a dad. Those things need to rank ahead of cards, no matter how much you're in or not into it. You got to prioritize. And sometimes it takes something like that to really put it into clear focus. And I'm glad you're doing better. I appreciate you talking about it and talking about it, how serious it is. And you're honest. You were honest when you said, "Hey, until I got it, I really didn't realize like how serious this really was." Like I know but I think when you come down with it and dealing with those symptoms firsthand, it really hits home, like how this can affect even other people, maybe that are older, have some immunocompromised, and some obviously people unfortunately don't survive it. And thankfully you're not in that category. We're having this conversation today, and I appreciate you sharing a little bit about that. Not everyone can do that with some stuff of a personal nature, but I appreciate it. All right, so let's talk about some more fun stuff. We don't want to make this just a medical show, but again, glad you're okay. So talk about you big time into vintage, but talk about when you got into cards. Was it vintage from the start? Kind of talk about your progression as far as card collecting, like when you started to sort of where you are now.
Well, when I first started, I picked up cards of players I remember idolizing and cards I always wished I owned. And so it was like Reggie Jackson and, some of those guys. And I didn't know if I wanted to invest so much money into cards in the beginning, but then afterwards you start seeing like what these autograph cards and parallels go for. And you start comparing it to some of the vintage cards that you have appreciation for, and you're like, I could pick up a Reggie Jackson card for $75, but Aaron Judge autograph goes for like 2,500. Like, it just
Yeah.
didn't make sense to me, but it lessened the blow to where, all right, I could pick up a Reggie Jackson rookie card. I always wanted that card when I was a little kid. And that's the one that kind of like got the ball rolling. And then I started picking up others and others and others. And then I I picked up Ernie Banks. That was like my first big card I picked up. And I think at the time it was close to $500. I could never imagine spending $500 on a card at the time.
Yeah.
But I did it because I always respected Ernie Banks for being one of the best shortstops that ever played the game. He has a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful card. His smile is just sunshine. He's Mr. Sunshine. But I always remember going through a Beckett grading magazine and seeing him in an advertisement and always thinking that was like a epic looking card for whatever reason. And when I picked that one up, then it got serious. It was like, that's the bug got me, and I just started vintage hunting and doing research on, key cards in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, and it just started taking a life of its own.
And the rest is history, as they say. Is there? I'll put you on the spot, James. Is there a card right now, like on your bucket list or your great? People call them grail list and cards. Is there a card? I know you mentioned the Banks was sort of that card. Reggie, we cards. Our want list and need list changes, all the time. But is there a card now that like, hey, I don't have this. It's not going to necessarily be cheap, but it is a target for me at some point. You got one of those?
Okay. Not in any order, but I will tell you Ty Cobb, T206 or T205 card.
Yeah.
That one slipped me by before the pandemic, and I regret not buying a Ty Cobb card at that time because I fussed over $100 difference. I was haggling with someone, and that $100 is costing me thousands now because that card is so expensive now, and I'm like, I cannot do this card right now. Like, I'm either gonna have to sell off cards I'm not attached to justify that pickup. But I did pick up an American Caramel Ty Cobb, so that kind of like took away the yearning for it so much. So I do own 2 Ty Cobb cards. It's just not his early playing day Ty Cobb, so he's still on my bucket list. Joe D, whether it's a 36 Worldwide Gum or the 38 Heads Up. And this is like holy grail status, Josh Gibson. If I could pick up a Josh Gibson card, that would be a big time holy grail card. I mean, I do own the 52 Mantle, so I did scratch off a holy grail per se, but that Josh Gibson for scarcity, I would really do flips on that one.
Yeah, and he doesn't have a lot of cards too. That's the other thing, as you well know. So yeah, that's and listen, I can relate to kicking myself for not making deals at the time. There's my card that would fit that description. Most people who listen to the show know before I even say it's going to be. I'm a big Jackie Robinson guy, being from Brooklyn. So the 48 Leaf. There was 3 separate occasions, James, early on before the crescendo and the rise of that card, where I had the opportunity to purchase it. And I just kind of had like some other things going on. And I'm just like, I'll get it another day. Like it'll be there when I'm ready to pull the trigger. And I did that on 2 or 3 occasions. And when I finally wanted to really pull the trigger, that price that it was at, no longer existed. It went on to a whole nother level, as we both know, and anyone that's in the vintage, where it became, I mean, even low grade copies, 1 or 2 great, graded are still very expensive. And it's one of those where man, if I could go back in like the DeLorean, like, with Back to the Future, I would go to all three of those occasions and tell myself, like, you better purchase it each and every one of those times for what you were being offered it, and you said no, or you're balked. And you learn, sometimes you learn the hard way. It's still on my list. Whenever I go to a big show, I kind of look for it with the thought, like, a low grade copy. If it hits me right, and the price is fairly reasonable, but it's getting tougher. And we've seen a little bit of a market dip, a market correction, but there's some of these cards, as you well know, especially on the vintage end, are sort of dip proof. These cards don't, no matter what the rest of the market's doing, these cards are sort of in a different atmosphere, and they still don't really drop in accordance. And so I guess my question, I know you like you said, you've been out of it a few weeks, but even before that, we have seen some prices drop, even in vintage, especially on the newer, the ultra modern, if you will. But the vintage market's been affected too. Some cars, obviously, some are sort of in that era, like the 48 Leaf, and others. Your Cobbs you mentioned too are probably unaffected by that. Have you noticed that at all? And some of your thoughts on it? You think that's just just kind of a bottoming out where it'll go back up again? Where do you fall on that side of the aisle?
Well, I just feel like every time seasons come and go, in all sports, like that's where you see people ignoring certain cards, and they figure they'll come back to them, and then they spike back up, and then they go down. So that's one thing I noticed. But like you said, vintage is always relatively strong, which is why I got into vintage very heavy in the beginning, was because if I told myself, if I'm going to be spending four figures on average on some of these cards for really nice examples, or even three figures per se, because I buy a lot of raw copies, and sometimes a raw copy could be had for like a third of going rate on a slab version. But I had to justify to myself that it wasn't a fool's gold type of investment per se, and that's why I always gravitated to vintage, because I always saw that they were pretty much stable per se. Like they would dip, but not as much. They would go up, but not as much. But that's fine with me because I appreciate them. I feel like it's very nostalgic and a bit of history. I feel like I'm holding artifacts sometimes when I look at my collection, especially with the pre-war cards. I just feel like these things should be in a museum, and I own them. Like, it's an amazing feeling. But I always felt like vintage is stable. I have noticed some cards, go a little bit down, like you said, but not much, like 100, 200. When people talk about Giannis, that card was like 7,500, and then it's down to like $4,000. Like that's a big swing, and it's a guy who just won the championship. Like I don't understand why he's dealing with so much volatility, but that's how it is with modern. But I just feel like it's a safer route to go if you're gonna throw money at certain cards.
Yeah, and one thing, and I know you'll agree with this being a vintage guy. One of the things I love about vintage is let's be honest. There's just less of it, quite frankly, which is makes the chase and the hunt all the more to me special. There's not as much, you go to a show nowadays, you've been to plenty yourself, as have I, right? And I sell a lot of ultramodern. I'm not trying to bash on it. It's probably a good percentage of my sales as a show dealer myself. I get it. But, and walking around as a consumer, you just see so much of it. There's no real shortage. I know there's parallels and numbered to 10 and 1-on-1. I get all that. But there's really, with the cards and the boom, we've never had as many collectors as we do today. Very little is getting destroyed or thrown out. as those vintage cards did, and bike spokes, and kids going to college, and the parents getting rid of the cards, and there's just a lot less of them. Then you get into the grading aspect to find higher grade copies of a lot of those cards is even another challenge. And there's something to be said about I'll use Luka Doncic for example. If someone says, "Hey, I want to buy his rookie card," you've got 300 choices. Which one, right? From low end, if you will, to all the way to RPAs and higher end stuff, $1 million Lucas that sold this year. But when you think about vintage, like you mentioned, the banks, the Jackie, for me, they have that one rookie card. For the most part, I know there's some exceptions to that rule, but in general, even those old time players, those vintage era players, have one card that's viewed as their first ever card, and it's very clear what it is, and makes it a lot easier. Not easier on the checkbook or the bank account, but there's no confusion to when you want a rookie card of Reggie, Ernie Banks, Jackie Robinson, Al Kaline, Mickey Mantle. You know which card it is. It's very clear, and if you don't know, someone can point you in the right direction. In today's modern age, like I said, a rookie today would have 200 to 300 different options to buy. Even if you wanted to get everyone, it's almost impossible. And there's something to be said about that. It's why I like vintage. It's why I tell people, I understand if you maybe don't know, someone younger maybe don't know all the players in the same vein that me or you do. Do your research and find out who you like, and do some vintage in some shape or form. I think it's just I don't know. I think it's I recommend it, which leads me into my next question for you. If someone was new, says, "Hey, James, I want to get into vintage, but I'm not as experienced as you are. You know your stuff. I'm starting from the ground level. Give me your best advice." I don't have. I'm not broke, but I'm also not rich. I'm that middle class collector, so to speak. I want to start a vintage collection. What advice would you give such a person that came to you and said, "Hey, where do I start? What do I do? How do I do this?" type of deal?
Well, with vintage, my advice would be basically do a little research first and foremost. So, like that, you have an idea of what you want to chase. Create a checklist. I would say go for what speaks to you. Is it Hall of Famers, Cy Young winners? Is it players from your team? Um, Hitters, pitchers? Find out what speaks to you. When you're gonna enjoy looking at the card and chasing these cards, what's gonna give you pride in just looking at your collection as a whole and make you feel good about it, like you invested your money in something that you're happy with. Because there's a lot of players that are so undervalued and can be bought for $10, $15. So they're not that hard. And then the thing is with vintage, what's so great is they don't necessarily have to be tens. Like with ultra modern, you want 10, you'll settle for 9, BGS 9.5s, but it's always got to be on that almost perfect level. Where with vintage, it's okay to even have a 1 that
Yeah,
has, a little missing something in the back, or a little scribble because little Johnny scribbled the league he's in or something, but it looks beautiful. And the corners are slightly bent. So what? It's been handled. It's been passed down to you. And it's like a baton that now you're the owner. And
yeah.
it just got like this connection. And it just, I feel like there's life to these cards. And your research, your budget, you need to factor what you're willing to get into, because when I got into making mantles, uh, that was that was a rabbit hole that really snagged me. I wanted to try to complete the run, and I have I think 11 of the run, but
Yeah,
they could really cost you. Certain
yeah,
cards are like, whoa. The 56 was my most recent mantle. No, 57 I just picked up, but I had to buy a raw one that looks like it might grade a 3 or 4, but it looks really sharp. And I finally found one for a reasonable amount. But that car was in the 500 range for a while. And then, like you said, like the market came down a little with that when I was able to get it in the 300s. So I was like, great. I waited and now I'm benefiting. So, but 300, that's an average price for a mantle and it's an ungraded one. Like I
yeah,
could buy an Ernie Banks, you know, 56 or 57 and they're going for like $30-$40. So you could get a nice collection going with a lot of these players, Hall of Famers, Immortals, and you could have a nice collection for not too much. It's a cool collection. Just do your research, figure out what speaks to you, really create a checklist that you're going to enjoy. Find out your prices, your price points for what type of grade you're looking for, and figure out what you're comfortable with spending for a certain key card. Is it 100? Is it 500? Does it need to be slabbed? Are you comfortable with buying raw? And if you buy raw, make sure you buy a couple common examples. So when you get that raw one, you have something to compare it to. Put them
yeah,
against each other. Make sure no one trimmed them. Make sure the card stock is right. And just do your diligence. Don't just throw money at it. Like it's okay to take a month and do a little research and do it slowly. It's not a
yeah,
race. Just take your time, enjoy it. You start to realize your lane will create itself, and
yeah,
what speaks to you will create itself once you start dabbling with this, dabbling with that, and next thing you know, you're not looking at those cards as much as you look at the other ones. It's because that's what speaks to you. Is it home run hitters? Is it average hitters? Is it players from your team? You'll start realizing what it is that speaks to you.
yeah. Great advice, James. And the other thing, and you touched on it too, in what you said there. Don't be afraid to ask someone who knows that you trust. Ask questions. There are no dumb questions, right? Just the ones, the old cliche, just the ones you don't ask. And you also touched on something else that whenever I get a vintage card in, that's going to be a card I PC and keep. That's not going to go out for sale. When I'm holding that card, I think, what's the history of this card? Who owned this? What city was this card in? Obviously it's here with me now, but it was with how many hands did this pass through before it got to me? Where did those people live? Who were they even? Do they collect cards now or just at the time and they're not in it? No. All these just crazy questions when you look at a card, the story behind the card. That's how my mind sometimes works. And, we don't always get the answers to those, but it's still fun to kind of think about where that card's traveled, from what state to, like what here with me, it'll be in New York, but what state was that in prior? Or was it always in New York if I bought it at a show in New York? Or if you buy something online, it's traveling from somewhere else. So just sort of the history of the card. Did maybe someone famous own it? Maybe famous as, they were as a kid, they weren't famous yet, but then who knows who they are. Just all sorts of weird stuff goes. That's the way my mind works, is just sort of the provenance of the card. Who had it for how long, where they were, do they still collect? Was it just a kid that collected in the 50s with a card that's from the 50s and not anymore? That sort of, all those questions go through my mind. Not that I can get actual answers necessarily, but it just makes you wonder. And the
Yeah.
wonder is sometimes the fun part.
Yeah,
Of,
it
of,
really gets the imagination going, and That's what I like about the nostalgia factor. You don't really get that with modern cards. Modern
Yeah,
cards is like, is it gonna grade a 10? Or, is it a refractor? Is it a parallel? Is it auto? But you don't really get that nostalgia feeling
yeah,
that you do with vintage and pre-war, especially. Um, it's just it. I feel like it gives you a life about your collection that's just can't be duplicated with ultra modern.
yeah. No, I agree. All right, so let's talk a little bit about your YouTube channel, Elite Hunters. Kind of talk about what made you do it. What made you start, video logging, uh, and take that leap.
Well, at first it was because I wanted to treat it as a journal. I
Yeah,
started buying all these like key rookie cards, Immortals, Hank Aaron, Roberto Clemente, all these mantles. And I just told myself, there may come a time I could need the money and I sell these cards off. And it's just a memory. Let me do a YouTube channel and then this will be like my journal and it'll remind me how excited I was when I first got it on mail day videos, or maybe I could have fun researching the cards and bring forward that same excitement when I learned something about a player I had no idea, and try to give that to the viewer. And if you watch some of my videos, I get into certain videos with a lot of statistics and fun facts and video clips. It's because I just want to give it life with the player, um, give a sort of like a tribute, or maybe teach you something you might not have known about a
yeah,
player, just like I might not have known until I bought the card and researched it and delved into him and read several articles on him. But I don't think I'm very entertaining. I'll be quite honest with you. So sometimes I just feel like if I do my research and give you something to think about, and maybe have some fun with a video clip, that it'll make up for the fact that I don't think I'm that entertaining.
Well, I'll disagree with you, James. I've seen some of your stuff. I think you are. I think the fact that you're given that information. I mean, that is entertainment in itself. Knowledge is entertainment, especially if you enthusiastic about it and passionate about it. I think that's very apparent, and it's great. It's a great point. When we acquire cards and then we learn a little bit more about the play. I've done that plenty of times myself, and you learn. We know what we got today, but today's game doesn't happen without those players bridging the past to the present. And for those that do vintage, it's sort of paying respects, honoring that past as well, learning about some of the things they did, records, even stuff off the field. A lot of these guys did a lot of stuff off the field just as impressive as on it, and I think that's important to note as well. So you know, you do a great job. We're all, I'm critical of myself too, so I get it, but sometimes it takes someone else saying, "Hey, I love it." You do a great job and whatnot. So we touched a little bit on modern and ultra modern. Do you do any of that at all, or at this point are you
I
really?
have everything. I have ultra
Yeah,
modern. I have pre-war. I have basketball. I have football.
yeah,
I have some hockey, but not really because I don't really watch hockey, so I don't know a lot about all the players. I do know about Wayne Gretzky, Sidney Crosby. Like I know about the
yeah.
players that are the guys, but not really too much about the history. And so I mainly stick to baseball 50% and then 25 basketball, 25 football. But baseball is like my wife, and then the other two are like my girlfriends.
I like that analogy. That's funny. Well, I got to ask you this. You do current stuff. Obviously, you do vintage stuff. Being a vintage guy, what tops means, especially to the baseball side of the hobby. 70 years. of history there. Yes, they're not perfect. I know they have their moments where we can armchair quarterback some things and how they operate. I get it. You obviously heard the news like everyone else with Fanatics getting that license here in a few years. Just two-part question. I guess number one, your initial reaction when you found out that news, especially as I'm a New York City kid. Tops has a special place in my heart. It's the first pack I ever opened was a '79 Tops baseball, and so kind of what you thought when you first heard the news initially, and what are you thought now that it's sort of settled in and other stuff has come out since then. How do you think this plays out? So two-part question: your initial gut reaction, and what now that sort of it's settled in, how do you think this all plays out?
My initial reaction was what just happened, because Tops is predominantly what I know cards to be. So to say there's only a few more years left of Tops and it's all I've known, it's the benchmark for cards. It's like, what just happened? It's like the rug got swept out from under me. And yeah, like you said, it's what you knew from a kid. It's the only thing you knew. And as far as what's going to happen in the future, I think it'll be fine. I mean, it's the players, it's the sport. It's not the brand that the cards are. Upper Deck comes out, we fall in love with it, then it phases out. Don Russ comes out, we fall in love with it. One of my favorite rookie cards, Don Mattingly. But
Yeah.
no one collects Don Russ right now. It's just, it will be fine. It's just the shock that they just basically monopolized card collecting when they made that power move. And we couldn't believe that Topps didn't want to like pony up the money to still be the baseball kings. But Fanatics, I don't know. They probably have some smart people that maybe they'll change the game in a way where like Prism took over basketball and football cards. Who knows? I'm not going to be so judgmental or cross them off before we see what they're going to do. I just hope they respect the hobby and the way we respect it, and they don't mess it up. I'm going to hope for the best.
Yeah, that's all you can do. We can't do anything about it. In Topps' defense, I don't think they really, if everything is true, James, I don't know if they had an opportunity. It sounds like the Players Association and the league sort of negotiated with Fanatics quietly behind the scenes, and sure there were some issues with Topps that led to that. So in Topps' defense, I don't think they really had an opportunity to even, let's say, match whatever that offer is. Fanatics gets a 20-year deal, according to reports. That's, to me, way too long. That's a long time to just give someone that's never done cards in this fashion before. But, that's what they did. There's nothing I can do about it. Like you said, I'm going to take a page from your book. It's still about the sport. It's still about the players that play the sport. I hope Fanatics is respectful to the collectors and does the right things with the collectors in the forefront of their mind. And I know it's a business. I know it's about money. Let's not be naive. Anyone that says otherwise is not being either doesn't know or is not being disingenuous. And I get that. I understand that. But we're the consumer, right, as collectors. And I just hope they keep sort of our best interests as best as they can. Also, as part of that equation, as well as the money-making equation. Well, like you said, time will tell. We'll have to wait and see. As something I always say on this show, James, too, is as consumers, we hold the hammer, right? If we don't like a product, if we don't like how the company's doing business, what can we do, right? Not buy the product. Send a message with our wallets and purses and bank accounts. And I think sometimes as collectors, we forget that we can wield that kind of wand. And if for some reason Fanatics doesn't do a good job, or we don't view it as good product or good job, we can do our talking with our money. And I hope we don't have to. I hope the opposite obviously happens, but we do have that power if we so choose to use it. So we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. Cross our fingers, right?
Yeah. So we'll have to see how this all plays out. But James, I appreciate you coming on. I'm glad you're feeling better. Like you said, not 100%, but little by little getting there. Maybe we'll see some videos soon. But like you said, health comes first. You got to put priorities in order. But for those, hey, the videos that you made are still there. So while you haven't done a new one recently, people maybe haven't seen it, can go catch all those. And the one thing with your videos, it doesn't matter how old they are. There's still you can watch them and learn stuff. It doesn't matter when they were uploaded. For those listening that may not know, tell everyone where they can find your channel and your videos.
You could go to YouTube, and you can find me at Elite Hunters with a space between Elite Hunters. And hopefully you watch a few videos and feel inclined to subscribe. I just try to have fun with the cards and share with you my experience. And I'm just a guy who's passionate about cards and the nostalgia factor. Even like with boxing, I collect a little bit of boxing.
Yeah.
Just like baseball, it spans from now all the way through the 1800s, and you'll find cards. Like I just love cards. I just love having that little piece of history in your hand and saying you own it, and it's just a cool feeling. I love it.
Yep. I say there's, the two best things you can be in this hobby is an advocate and an ambassador. To be an advocate, you got to be passionate. Got to, it's got to shine through that you love this hobby. You're a great advocate. And an ambassador is someone who shares their knowledge, is there to answer any questions someone has, and spread hobby love. And you do that as well. So you're a great advocate and a great ambassador. I try to be the same, and we need more of that as much as we can get. So keep doing a great job. When you're ready to do more videos, I'm sure there'll be. I know I'll watch them, and hopefully a lot of other people. But like you said, health comes first. Get back to 100%, and hopefully we'll see you some more Elite Hunter videos soon.
It'll come, hopefully sooner than later, but I've been trying to get the wheels turning on that aspect. It's just a little bit of time. That's all I need.
Yeah. Well, no rush. And like I said, the stuff that you have there is evergreen, where anyone can watch it at any time and still learn and be more knowledgeable. And that passion comes through no matter what. So thanks again, James. And I'm going to get back to Dallas here, hopefully sometime soon here with the new year approaching, and maybe we'll hang out at the Dallas Card Show.
Likewise. Thank you for having me. This was fun. It was a long time coming because we've talked on the phone for a little while. And it's been a long time coming. But thank you for having me. It was fun. And can't wait to hopefully do another one.
We'll do it again. Maybe, like I said, when I get there, we'll do a live one in Dallas. That'll be fun. So
that'll be fun.
All right, James. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.